Right now on Tech Radio, how AI is killing STEM.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and around the world. This is episode 1044, where we are talking about a Bitcoin bounce, iCloud in the dock, and why it's a great day to join Blue Sky. Plus, we have an exclusive interview with futurist Gerd Leonhart about how AI will force big changes in how and what children learn in our schools.
From techcentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always is our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. Niall, Trump, wow. What a week it has been on the stock market, in the tech industry, and in particular with crypto.
Yeah, the market is really liking it. I've been reading reports also of people dumping stocks and shares, which is kind of counterintuitive. So I'm not sure how reliable that is. But last week we talked about sort of 10 things that were going to happen during Trump presidency Mark II, and one of them was about crypto and his plan to make America the crypto capital of the world. We weren't entirely sure what he meant when he said that, but now he's actually come out and said two things that it's good optics. I don't know how much of it will come to pass. I don't know how much of it will have a material effect, but two things that are good optics. Right. So he has said he will do two things. He will fire the chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission, gentleman by the name of Gary Gensler. Now, the SEC's job is basically to impose standards in financial services. So if you have a decentralized digital currency, it kind of falls outside their remit to a certain extent, to the point where they can almost say it's not proper currency. We're not going to give it any validation. And the second was that he said he was going to create a national Bitcoin reserve, and as he said, sort of a Fort Knox for Bitcoin. It's kind of hard to see how that is actually going to happen, and yet, for a technology, for a movement that is crypto, which is so infused with this sort of rebel mindset that the government can't get near us, we're doing everything internationally on blockchain and it's globally distributed and nobody can catch us. The idea of all of a sudden having control of Bitcoin centralized doesn't seem to be that much of a problem now that the guy they wanted is in the White House. That sort of has melted away somewhat. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting. I've a more simplistic read of it, and I think it was the Democrats and Biden and co were not really in favor of crypto in general.
Yeah.
Whereas Trump, my impression is he knows very little about it. But he has very much a laissez-faire attitude to life, and I think they will just lay off on any kind of regulation, and they will let crypto grow. And because he's going to be in power for the next 4 years, with an attitude of, just let it grow, see what happens. That's why everybody's jumping on it, I think.
Yeah, well, an attitude of, let's burn the apparatus of the state down. So let's get rid of as much regulation as possible. Now, I mean, when it comes to the chair of the SEC, it's generally the done thing that they resign at the end of an administration. So for Trump to make an announcement that I'm going to fire him, I mean, it's kind of the done thing that the chair would step down anyway. So It would require a somewhat remarkable set of events for him to decide that he's actually going to fire someone. Now, as we know, Donald Trump has his own crypto called Trump Coin. Would you care to guess its current value at the moment? Actually, as we're talking, right, for context,
go on.
Can you guess the current value of Bitcoin?
Well, I'm keeping an eye on Bitcoin anyway. So yeah. I know that in euro, all right, it's in and around 85,000. and I think that's around $90,000, and it seems to be they're kind of talking about like, you know, it's hit 90,000, and that's a point where a lot of people have said, once it hits 90 grand, I'm going to sell a load, and that's what's happening. And then a load of other people are buying it, so it's kind of going up and down, so kind of between $94,000 and $90,000, I believe.
Yeah, and the speculation is that it'll hit 100,000 by the end of the year.
Yes. And when it does, I mean, that is a huge... That would be massive.
That's one Bitcoin, right? The next one in line, and it's not the next in terms of quality because that'd be Ethereum. But the next coin I'm going to mention is Dogecoin, which is Elon Musk's favorite crypto, just because he liked the idea that it's a meme coin, is worth 38 cents per coin, right? So that's the drop off that we're looking at here, right? So with that as context, how much do you think a Trump coin is worth?
Oh God, I would imagine
president, Mr. Crypto,
utterly valueless. I don't think anybody would have it if it's worth cent. Who knows? I don't care what price it is. I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah, it's not even worth 2 cents. It's basically a cent. You could buy the entire net Trump coin for just under $100,000. You could buy a currency for under $100,000. That's how well Trump coin is doing at the moment. So, you know.
Yeah, what did they just call it Trump coin, or did they call it like a trumpet or a...
No, just Trump coin.
A Trumpar.
The marketing people sat up all night thinking about what to call it.
Thinking about it. But I think, I think Trump being the president-elect has really kind of given people a positive boost in that they're kind of going, great, this is going to be good for crypto and for deregulation, and we'll be able to continue on and it'll become more and more valuable and stuff like that. So that's kind of interesting. But what about Musk? What about Musk actually changing job from billionaire to civil servant?
Oh, come on. I mean, we know this is just a publicity stunt. I mean, Elon Musk has tried to reinvent himself as some sort of right-wing power broker. I mean, he's been given the Department of Government. It's not expenditure. It's spelt the same way as Dogecoin or Dogcoin.
Yeah. Efficiency, Department of Government Efficiency.
Government Efficiency. Thank you. Yeah. Which he is heading up with Vivek Ramaswamy, who is one of the failed presidential candidates who dared to go up against Donald Trump, but promptly, changed his tune and threw in behind him, and best man for the job. And guess what? He's gotten this sort of this what's the word, sinecure. That's it. Sort of a kind of a meaningless job that's well paid, and you'll be over there. So they're both over in one corner. Trump knows what he wants to dismantle already. These two chuckleheads are going to be in charge of dismantling it. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, the state apparatus in the US, I think we're going to learn an awful lot about how things work over there on a federal level over the next 4 years, and we're all going to be getting very upset over things we have no idea how they work about. But there you go. I mean, apparently Musk is going to be some kind of advisor, and I don't know. I mean, when you look at the cabinet that Trump has assembled, and this sort of segues into our next thing that we're going to be talking about, it is sort of kind of an all-star team. So the question is, I mean, for me, my reading of things on the basis of Trump 1 is that Trump has what they call main character syndrome. Do you know what that is? It's basically, in any situation, they think they're the main character, right? So if you have somebody that thinks that they might be the main character, for example, Mr. Musk, I don't think they're going to be compatible for very long. I think they might have creative differences and respectfully go their own ways. That's my prediction.
I had a different way of looking at it. and the way I was looking at it is there's two egomaniacs.
Yeah.
So,
That's it.
there's no way they're going to agree on stuff. I think whatever happens, it's certainly going to be an interesting 4 years. It could be a dangerous 4 years. It may not be as bad as people are saying, but whatever, it's going to be.
One thing that will make the next 4 years feel not as bad, given anyone that has been on X throughout the entire presidential election. All that, we've all been exposed to an awful lot of toxicity, an awful lot of misinformation, disinformation. We see lots of ads for drop shipping campaigns, just stuff bought in bulk off Temu and resold. We've seen an awful lot of garbage over the last, few years really, and the world has been crying out for a competitor. And we had Mastodon a couple of years ago. Didn't really take off. Mastodon kind of had its time when Musk bought Twitter, and there was that initial exodus that a lot of people saw what was going to happen, and they were like, okay, we're out of here, where can we go? Mastodon. Okay, fine, let's do that. Mastodon didn't quite achieve the critical mass that was needed in order to sort of get people to come over, and X has just gotten so bad that a lot of people have just went, you know what, there's this other thing over here called Blue Sky. It's open source. Let's give it a go. It's got really nice user protections. You don't have to be exposed to anything that you don't want to be. And, people are actually quite civilized over there. So I made the move, along with how many people do you think have left X with its user base of allegedly 600 million people to go somewhere else?
I would say quite a lot, because X has got a really bad reputation in the last, since Musk took over, and it's just, it's all kinds of crazy people are on there at the minute. So for somewhere, if Blue Sky, as you say, is more sociable and a little bit more sensible, I think a lot of people would jump. In the world, globally, you mean?
Yeah.
I would say hundreds of thousands, millions, I would say.
You are, a little bit optimistic, but I think we'll get there. 1 million people have left X since the election of Donald Trump. And I've been bouncing back and forth. I went to Blue Sky and I joined various communities there. And one thing that's very handy is people set up what they call starter packs. So you're like, okay, who do I actually follow? Well, you click on a starter pack and it just gives you a list of relevant people, and you just go one click and you subscribe to everybody. So it makes it very easy to repopulate your list, your feeds. And also makes it very, very easy to meet new people, and people who are there acting in good faith and having civilized conversations and being helpful to each other, very much in the mold of pre-Musk Twitter. And it's super nice over there at the moment, to the point that in looking at what's happening on X and people responding to Trump's cabinet picks and this sort of thing, it's still triumphalist, and it's still, yay Trump, yay Republicans, etc., yay MAGA. But all the people that normally would have, raised red flags or gotten angry or fought with people, they've all moved over to Blue Sky. So there's an awful lot of, yay MAGA, but there's nobody there pushing back. So this is interesting to me, because there are other social networks that have, I think Gab is gone now, but there's like Jabber, Getter, Truth Social, and other places where you can go that will give you exactly that kind of vibe. And, X just seems to have fallen victim to it, which is the most disappointing thing. Since Musk took over and decided that, free speech absolutism, which is just code for I'm lazy, and don't want to invest in content moderation.
Or I just want to let the crazy people talk.
Yeah, it's like, he posts about how well he's doing in Diablo. And it's like, what is your job? Is that your job? Can you demonstrate that you're adding value to your company? You're out campaigning for Trump. What is your job?
What kind of value is on Twitter these days? Because I think it's funny because I can't remember how long it is since Musk bought Twitter, but people still refer to it as Twitter, even though you rebranded it as X. He's made a complete mess of it because people still refer to it as Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter, which is ridiculous. He paid 40 billion something, whatever. I can't remember what it was. Any idea on what it's worth today?
A fraction thereof. I think it was 22 billion he paid for it, but grossly overvalued at that.
Of course.
Grossly overvalued. Tried to get out of actually buying it and failed. So I think the purchase price is largely made up of debt and loans to people that maybe you don't want to owe money to. So there's an awful lot of people leaving. The Guardian is left. I was going through my account and like all the news outlets that I would have followed on X have now moved over to Blue Sky.
All right, okay.
Nobody wants that brand association anymore. Musk heard the Guardian is gone. They've gone to Blue Sky. He said it was irrelevant. The Guardian is irrelevant. It's like, dude, they've got 85 million unique users a month. That's not a word I would put on them.
No, that's more people
angered you. That's different.
Yeah, that's more people than live in the UK, which is where they're based. Interesting. Speaking of the UK, bad news coming out of the UK this week for Apple.
Yeah, this is an interesting story. So, kind of related to what we've been seeing in the EU. And when I came across this story first, if you had replaced UK for EU, you would have gone, okay, yeah, par for the course, that's fine. Yeah. But this is actually happening in the UK. And this is a class action suit brought by the consumer advocacy group Which. You're probably familiar with Which magazine.
Which magazine, of course, yeah.
If you wanted to buy something, it's a very good non-partisan source of information. And they have taken an action against Apple over the positioning of iCloud on Apple devices, effectively in the same way that Edge or Internet Explorer used to be the default browser with Windows to the exclusion of everything else, to the point now where you open a browser and you're asked which browser do you want to be your default, right?
Yeah.
Instead, when you buy an Apple device, it's kind of assumed that the cloud service you want is iCloud, as opposed to Box or Dropbox or Google Drive. They're not all given the same prominence. And Which's argument is that, hey, in a marketplace like this, you should be given the choice. You shouldn't have iCloud presented to you as the cloud storage option.
Yeah.
You should have everything presented to you so the consumer can make an informed choice as to what's right for them, right? So what's best on price, what's best on offering, etc. You should be able to make that decision as the consumer instead of given one option that's simple and easy to use and preloaded versus something that you might have to download. So it's an issue that we've seen when it comes to app stores in the EU. You will now be able to access third-party app stores for Apple devices, should one be, flaholic or flush enough to actually set one up, because Apple did put in a fairly hefty setup charge, I guess you might call it. So the possible fine that could be dished out in England is £3 billion, pounds sterling, if Which gets its way. What do you mean? Now, you are nodding your head, but in a slightly, yeah, but why wouldn't they kind of way. So what's your thoughts on it?
I just want to find out how much of a 3 million possible fine, how much they've actually been fined. Because 3 billion kind of sounds, Apple could afford to pay more.
Yeah.
Anyways, go on. What is the actual fine that they're facing?
Well, they're looking at a fine of £3 billion, right? We don't know.
So they've gone for the max. They've gone for the max, is it?
Yeah. So we'll see what comes of it. I mean, it won't. They won't end up paying $3 billion. But the idea is, how much has a customer lost out on? Say if you signed up in 2015, which is when the case goes back as far.
Yeah.
How much have you lost out had you bought a competing offering delivering the same thing, right? Because iCloud's free tier is actually pretty scabby. I mean, it's what, 5 gigs? That's not a lot by today's standards.
They're all a bit scabby. I think Google's 15 gigs, but even still, that's a bit scabby if you want to put it that way. I have it's interesting what you're saying about the offers that are presented to you, because I was setting up a Mac Mini this morning, and again, it came to the cloud option. It was like click here to set up iCloud. That was the only option that was given to me, so I skipped. So I don't know what happened after that, but I do know that we don't use iCloud, we use another service, and it does not work very well with Apple, but it works flawlessly with Windows. Yeah. So I don't know if that's Apple kind of downgrading the service, but I'm really annoyed, as you know, with Apple, because you can only sync a cloud service with the drive that comes with your Apple. You can't sync it with an external bigger drive, which is what everybody doing, and that is really annoying. Because it means then when I'm trying to open something, it's trying to download like 4 gigs of information. Just to open a particular project and stuff like that. So to see like the UK or the EU, whoever it is, saying to Apple, you cannot give your own solutions preferential treatment, I think is good news for me.
Yeah, and that's why I was surprised. I mean, it is in contravention of the Digital Markets Act, which, the whole point of it is, hey, let's remove the walled gardens. Let's create a level playing field. If you want iCloud, go for it. That's fine.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you know what? If I suppose therein is the rub, because you could kind of say, well, Apple could give their iCloud certain advantages because iCloud will work best with Apple devices. So does that mean then that you're putting other services at a disadvantage?
Well, I'm sure the EU is all over that as well. The point is to offer a competitive product. If Apple are managing not to do that by making their offering more expensive than the competition, for offering better API access or something like that, that's an issue. And that's exactly the kind of thing the Digital Markets Act is set up to sort out.
And it's good to see that the UK is kind of following that standard, as it were. All right, what else have we got going on in the news today? Now, speaking of massive fines, there's been a huge fine for a data breach with 23andMe.
Well, it's not so much the fine that we're worried about, it's what happens after, because granted, a fine is one thing when it comes to a data leakage. However, when you are a company that deals with information about people and personally identifiable people, that kind of thing, then you're in trouble. Now, 23andMe, genetics company, kind of, they work on genetic gene therapies, but also have made their name on being able to trace people's family background. Right? What you do, I think the test is something very simple. It's like the swab on the inside of your cheek. You send it off, they parse out this genetic material, and they find matches. So that's part of their business. Unfortunately, last year they were hacked, and some of their customer data was stolen and put up for sale on the dark web. So they had 1 million people of Jewish Ashkenazi descent and 100,000 users of Chinese descent. Their data was put up for sale online. Huge reputational damage to 23andMe. Not to mention huge personal security issues that would raise as well, to the point where the company is culling 40% of its workforce, downsizing everything that they're doing, and even looking at selling off parts of the business, like their IP and that sort of thing. Effectively, this is, it's a dark time to be working at 23andMe, and it's not like this is the only company doing what they're doing. I mean, you've got the likes of Ancestry, and of course on the gene therapy side, you've got CRISPR and that kind of thing as well. So, not alone in their field, but just shows the cost of a breach in terms of reputational damage.
Last story for today, I suppose, is kind of a little bit related to data breach and stuff like that, because one of the keys to data breach is to have a good password, or to have a pass key, or to have your fingerprint reader or whatever it is on your laptop. But when we get back to good old Ireland, yay! We love our passwords, and we love the most complicated passwords in the world, he said sarcastically. What is the most common password in Ireland, Niall?
The most common password in Ireland, 123456.
Oh my God. What's the second most common password?
Password.
What's the third most common password?
QWERTY123.
Oh, for God's sake. All right. Yeah. Who's this report from, and what do you make of it?
Yeah, this is a report from NordPass. They actually did a global report, but they split out some of the information for Ireland as well. Yeah. It just makes you wonder, like, do people either not care about some of the things that they sign up for? Like, I mean, we all sign up for so many things, and we know the level of personal information disclosure is... it varies across different things. Sometimes it's just, here's the thing I need to log into. Do I really need a password? Yeah. Possibly, maybe not. I'll just come up with something ridiculously easy that I can remember. So not all passwords, not all services are created equal. So I guess there are some situations where there is temptation to do the abundantly obvious. You had a formula at one point for doing your passwords. Do you still use a personal formula?
Using passkeys a wee bit now, but there is a formula that I've always recommended to people, all right, and it's very, very easy to remember, and it's the kind of thing that you can use anywhere, all right, even for those websites where you think, it's not that important, all right, and that's generally kind of like, you think of a song that you like and that you can sing in your head. And whatever the phrase is, it could be the chorus, it could be the opening line, it could be the title of the song or whatever, but just to use the first letter of each word of that sentence, and that can be your new password. And it's just completely random. And then if you want to mix it up a little bit more, you can change it then according to the website by including like some of the letters from the website that you're using. So if you're using, kind of Google or something like that, you might use the first three letters at the start of your password, GOO, and then whatever the song is. And that way you are creating a password that is 8 or more characters long. It's completely random, but it is very, very easy for you to remember without needing a password app. But I have found now that I am using a password app more. I'm using passkeys more, and I'm using more of the passwords that are generated by the password app, which are like kind of 26 character long passwords that you would never remember. The only problem with some of those things is that they're tied to certain machines, or you have to have your password manager built into it. And I worry about, if somebody gets into your password manager, then what do you do?
Well, as has happened before, LastPass was the sort of gold standard for a while in password managers, and unfortunately it was hacked in 2022, was it? And it's, again, reputational damage. People just have not recovered from that. I think it's had a couple of breaches, to be honest. But I mean, it's still there. It's still regarded quite highly, but just a lot of places that had recommended it before have sort of taken it off the list. So there are the internal browser passwords. Personally, I always recommend using two-factor authentication. Biometric authentication, even better. I know the password for a lot of things on my laptop is actually my thumb. And I also recommend using an authenticator app, like is built into
Google Authenticator of one. A couple of them have them out, but there has to be a better answer, and I don't know what that answer is, because everything we have at the moment is just still a pain in the rear end.
It is.
I don't have a better solution or any better answer. It's just, there's so many passwords you have to use. Do you know what I find? the day is I find that I am kind of saying, oh, Grant, I'll just do that quickly. And then that quickly ends up into being, oh my God, I've got to log in. And then I got to username, password, blah, 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 or whatever way you're going to do. Two-factor authentication. Then I've got to go find my phone, come back, put in that number. It just give up. So this job that I thought in my head would take 60 seconds ends up taking 15 minutes.
Yeah. So here's the last question.
Go on, last question. Go on.
Have you ever mixed up a work with a personal password? Have you ever used a personal password for something work-related?
I don't know because I try and use different passwords on everything. Why do you ask?
Because that's a problem a lot of people fall into. They end up using their personal password for something work-related.
Okay, and what's the problem?
Just keep them separate. It's not hard.
Does it annoy your OCD if they get mixed up? Is that?
Yeah, maybe it does. Yeah, maybe that's it.
There you go. All right. Listen, Niall, thanks for keeping us up to date with all of the news this week.
Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland.
We've been talking on the podcast about the need for better education in science, technology, engineering, and maths, STEM subjects, almost since the first episode way back when. However, as technology moves on, is it time now to start focusing on the qualities unique to humans, like critical thinking? Gerd Leonhart is a futurist and CEO of the Futures Agency, and he had a chat with Niall Kitson at a Samsung event recently about the need to reinvent education in the age of AI.
Gerd, one of the things we've championed on the podcast for the longest time has been the idea that our education system should shift towards a model based on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. You come at things from a slightly different perspective in the age of AI, where we're constantly told the kind of skills that will be needed by the economy will require sort of more technical skills, but you come at it from a different perspective.
You know, I think the technical skills are always good to have those, and will be good to know how to program, but they will not make the day in the sense of careers, because computers are entirely capable of programming and writing code and mathematics and even invention. Protein folding, AlphaFold, story goes on. Machines can do that. They can't be creative with it because they don't know what matters, the alignment problems, right? But they can fulfill those functions of scientific methods, because they're logical. So what happens eventually is that we use machines to do all of that kind of commodity work for us. And when it gets creative, we have to be able to question, to debate, to intuit, to have intuition, to imagine, to do the things that make us human. For example, humans easily question one thing and accept the other without much argument. We do that kind of based on feelings, right? And on intuition. Like, can I trust you? Are you going to, what kind of person you are, pretty quickly. Very hard to do for machines because you have to ignore facts. And this is called the intractable problem in computing. It's a problem that's not solvable because all of the data changes. Right? So the idea of having an education that competes with computers on smartness is a lost cause. So we are different than machines. We may also be machines, that's a different question, but a different kind of machine if it comes down to that, right? So I believe a machine is an alien intelligence, a machine, a binary intelligence. And for us to learn how to do things like case studies, logic-based models, deriving results from examples, and all that stuff that we used to learn when you get an MBA, all of a sudden that becomes kind of, really what we want is to question all of that. So as Steve Jobs said, art and creativity and technology. And I think that is the real challenge now with education, because we believe for a long time that if we had better STEM workers, better technologists, better programmers, then that will be the future. And now it's the other way around. We need people who are negotiators, who can invent things, who are capable of conflicts, who can see the global context. So I'd rather have kids, for example, to be able to build a sandcastle than to program a computer. Because there's different skills there that are uniquely human. And eventually, computers may be able to simulate those human skills, right? But they still won't exist.
And I think because we're entering the age of low-code or even no-code software development, that the skill does become specifying the outcome rather than building it yourself.
I think it's always going to be a mix because, let's be clear, a lot of coding for a long time was a lot of commodity work. Go through all the lines, making sure they're clean, making sure they do what they're supposed to do. A lot of that work can be done by a good machine because it's about logic. But to decide at a certain point to send the query in a different direction or to use another kind of code for whatever the reason, this is more like an intuitive reason. That's why when you have a computer conversation, you're always having this conversation within the realm of the previous models. You can't break out of the previous models because there would be too many options for the computer. So I think for us, it means that we have to learn things at school that are human-only skills. And that includes compassion, empathy, ethics, values, philosophy, art, sports. And the biggest distinction really is that we have a body. I think you can give a body to a computer, of course, but in our complexity right now, for the next 20 years, until we reach this singularity thing, we have a body that dictates everything. And we're not independent of the body. Like I can smell and touch and make decisions that way. That's why we travel. We don't look at screens. Computers are perfectly fine with screens because they can read all the data, right? So that's why in education we really have to think hard about what it means to be human rather than to be functioning. A lot of education was about functioning.
I think for the last, we'll call it 20 or 30 years, we have been looking to hump out knowledge workers as sort of the outcome of our education system. Some cynics have said that, look, we're not looking to develop rounded people out of schools. We're looking to create effectively a talent pipeline for Google. If we are giving a sort of renewed purpose to the humanities to occupy the role that over the last 2 years would have been given to mathematics, for example, how do you think that is going to change the nature of the talent pipeline that the likes of Google, that the likes of Apple will be looking for?
Well, first of all, of course, when machines get better at doing the monkey work, the commodity work, we won't need that many people doing that kind of work, right? So we're going to be looking for people who can question and come up with ideas and query and do narratives. And this is what good people do. And of course, everybody knows that there's no such thing as the left brain and the right brain. It's all converging. And it's not like you're going to have emotions or not, or you have empathy or not. I mean, the scientists can have empathy, right? It's not just the scientists. And famous people like Einstein were known for this, the intellect, but also their personality. So I think what it means for us for education, we have to rethink and plan for events where it's mostly about certificates and personality traits rather than this official stamp, ready to be a robot kind of stamp, That's what an MBA was for a long time. So if you got an MBA from Harvard, you were a better robot than the MBA from Trinity College, And a lot of companies wanted robots for those, more or less, creative robots, right? But now the robots thing is shifting out. So that also means we probably won't be working as much. Well, and we will get paid in some other way, to have less work or get paid the same.
So it looks like we will have a healthier work-life balance, or maybe employers that expect us to work maybe a lot better than we are at the moment. You mentioned there skills and certification. Do you think then that we should move towards a model of being recognized for achievements at a smaller level rather than looking at, a BA or an MBA as a sign of competence?
Yeah, that's already happening because many companies say, okay, let's have a look what you did. You spend 1 year biking around Vietnam or you have those kind of survival skills, or you've done X, Y, Z, and that's kind of like a stamp, And a lot of companies are looking for this. If you can do both, then of course it's the best. But if you're going to spend 100K or so to get an education, to get an MBA, then the question is, would you be better off to spend 100K doing a startup or doing something and use that experience as the stamp, And the answer is probably yes. But it's easier for me to say I don't have an MBA, So I think for a lot of, this is a kind of a cookie cutter method of qualification. So very soon in the near future, you're going to be certified for community building or certified for AI human interfaces. And that could only take a half a year. Or it could come by working somewhere. And then, I think those kind of things are going to become really important. And also, we're going to be a lot older because we're getting older. Everybody's getting older. So you're going to get a 60-year-old person that has done XYZ all his life, and then he has a certificate in human computer interfaces, that I use for a certain kind of work. And a lot of that work will not be on location. It'll be in the cloud. Right?
There are a lot of people that are advocates of lifelong learning. Does this mean that we are all going to have to embrace lifelong learning?
I think most likely not in the next 10 years, but after that, yeah. Because, again, I think work is going to be a lot more fluid. So there may be ways of saying, I haven't worked much between 20 and 30 because I was doing XYZ, something else, and then you work a lot and then you work less. And there's a financial model that supports it. For example, the basic income model supports that in principle, but we could also have a basic coverage. So rent and food would be covered, and healthcare. So you could do the things that you like. So some people talk about the Star Trek economy, where it's basically about self-fulfillment. And you have a financial benefit of a sort, but not obviously. That may very well be the future of education and work because of AI.
Let's talk a little bit about creativity, which, a lot of people are looking at AI as a tool. We are, however, seeing AI as a replacement in some fields. We are seeing websites that can generate music using AI, and some people are pretty adept at spotting it, and some people aren't. What is your opinion of AI in the arts, either as a tool or as a replacement for a genuine creation?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the other tools that we kept inventing, from Pro Tools to Cubase to all of those. They helped us to do things faster, and then they created a new economy around those tools. And it does make it more possible for a 12-year-old to do with less money, which is a good thing primarily. But it does not do away with the ingenuity that you have to really create something good. And I think, in fact, because of AI, the bar is going up. So a lot of people would say that story is like constructed. And sometimes it's fine if you have constructed music, because if you're going to use background music or elevator music, it's functional. Right? So, but anything that really evokes emotion or relationships has to be more real, because otherwise people feel cheated. Like, would you watch a movie that's made by an AI and that costs $100,000 rather than $100 million to make, even if people found it just as good? It's unlikely you would. Like a digital Picasso, an AI that's like a Picasso, probably wouldn't be appreciated. And I think it's not because it's better or worse. There's no such thing in art, It's about the perceived value. And the human value, whether it really gets the juices flowing. Right? So it could be heaven or it could be hell, but I think primarily a lot of these tools are powerful tools that will help people to get into it. and then realizing that what they know isn't enough. It's like when you're a writer, you know what it's painful to write, right? So you spend hours and hours, and then you have better tools. You can check your writing, and then you realize even more there was shit to begin with, right? And then you have to start again, and it puts you back on yourself. It doesn't replace bad things with good things. It just makes them slightly better. Yeah. So will it eventually become so good that you can't distinguish? That could be possible.
I think George Romero had a wonderful comment about the great effects of technology, or great effects of tools on his art. And he said, my biggest influence is Microsoft Word. However, when we are looking at AI-generated art, we are looking at sort of the impulse behind it, which is to, establish a connection with somebody, which is something AI can't do. It can replicate, but it doesn't have that motivation. Do you think that's something people will recognize and accept, that, okay, yeah, it is AI generation and it's fulfilling a role, but I want to be able to lie back and listen to something like Bohemian Rhapsody that would have come out of absolutely nowhere, that is trying to connect with me on a human level?
I think that art has a lot to do with effort, to undertake the effort and the pain of the effort. And yes, sometimes it can be effortless, but not very often. Usually it requires a lot of effort. And then you keep doing it, it gets better. And without that, it is somewhat meaningless. Even if it could be good or brilliant, it comes across as meaningless. Like a perfect copy of a Dali painting or Picasso, So I think the effort really matters. And it's just part of a human recognition that effort matters. And you can undertake effort with AI also. But there's something missing in this idea that I can effortlessly create by doing very little and bypass all of that. I think that's just not the reality of things.
Just bring it back to the point of learning to know what you don't know, especially with the advent of technology advancing as quickly as it is. Should that be part of the education process, to look at, maybe a certificate in humility or something like that, just to have a philosophical appreciation that technology doesn't have an endpoint?
Yeah, I mean, we're coming out of the time of education where it was mostly about facts and logic and skill, which is practical, and repeatable things. And that was good for a long time because computers weren't able to do it. And now computers are able to do that. And now we're being thrown back to what the difference is. And the difference will shrink over years. So we're going to end, as I always say, awesome humans on top of amazing technology. And we may eventually find ourselves, like Marshall McLuhan said, the tool, we make the tools and the tool makes us. So we can't do much without the tools, but the tool certainly will do nothing without us, unless we enable the tool to be conscious, which some people won't. I think it's a bad idea. But I always say about that is basically about competence, not about consciousness. And when you have practical things, you want competence. Driving, flying, mapping, all that sort of thing. That's competence. When you're about quality of life and relationships, you want consciousness. And you can't get consciousness from those systems. You can simulate consciousness from the systems. And that may be good enough for some people, like the electronic pet that they have in Japan. So that the pet is nice and clean, and you can pretend it's a pet, But there's a purpose in that. I wouldn't know what it is, but I understand people think of that as purpose. But I think in the end, consciousness is something we're looking for in art and in creation, that we can feel what's there on the other side. And some people say that's like human exceptionalism, that we think we're so exceptional. That may be true, but in the end, we may eventually, like in 2050, get to that intersection where this becomes the number one topic. Whether that can be achieved. But I think technically speaking, it can be achieved. Whether we want to achieve it, that's a political question.
One of the things that we're kind of assuming in our study of AI at the moment is good faith on the part of the human. that, we are studying these things towards some sort of beneficial end, whether it be reinventing work or education. It is, however, something that we are struggling with, particularly in the advent of something like 70 plus elections happening this year around the world. Are people putting too much stake in the idea of people acting in good faith when it comes to AI? Or would you like to see regulation either at government level or at industry level catching up to, I suppose, the way information is being reshaped and remolded to convince people of things that just aren't so?
I think the primary problem is not technology, is our economic model that says that you have to monetize. So you end up in a social network like Facebook and others that used to bring people together for their own purpose and to create community. And that was the great thing about it. And then it became a money machine. And then the money took over. And if the same thing happens with AI, then we're in deep trouble. Because basically then you're going to say, it doesn't matter what the side effects are, lies, democracy, failing, misinformation, because we're selling clicks. If that is the prime objective, then we're in trouble. So, and that is where those companies come in, having to accept the responsibility, not hiding behind some copyright act or so, by saying that they're entitled to this. Because if you have 3.5 billion users, you're not entitled to protection that you have as a telecom, or, it's just different, You're creating, you're shaping humanity, right? And this is why I think companies like OpenAI, their agenda and their declared goal is not something that should be left up to private companies.
And that was Gerd Leonhart, Futurist and CEO of the Futures Agency, chatting with Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some of the other stories we have online that we weren't able to squeeze into the podcast, including...
we have Meta lowering the price of ad-free Facebook subscriptions. A managed service provider, Nostra, has a new office in Cork. And the US pushes efforts to create an international approach to cybercrime at the UN.
You'll find those stories and lots more, of course, online at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and, of course, with RTE Radio 1 Extra. In the meantime, please do share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, and now also on YouTube. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.